The computer. From the studios in Fairfax City, we're very humble and grateful that Miles Brown accepted our invitation to our show. Miles is an Australian thereminist, composer, and experimental artist, working with a ethereal interface on his gesture-controlled instrument. He combines unique emotional landscape that query the relation between space, sound, electronics, and the body. Miles, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Mario.
So, Miles, the first question, so more than an interview, it's going to be a conversation about music. Feel free to interrupt me if you want to ask some questions. Well, but the first thing, so for those who new to your music, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name's Miles Brown. I'm a theremin player and composer from Melbourne, Australia. Originally from Tasmania, Hobart, Tasmania, and I play the theremin mostly. I also play synth and bass guitar and a whole bunch of other stuff, but mostly my musical life is about playing the theremin, which is a musical instrument that you play without touching. You move your hands in the air to play it.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll go into more detail later. So with everything that is going on this year with the pandemic and people dying, how you doing? How's it affected your life, your country, the ability to compose music? Everything have changed.
Yeah, very much so. 2020 was a year in Melbourne where we were in lockdown for a large part of the year, like many months of hard lockdown, as in not able to go out of the house after 8 p.m, curfew, and masks and craziness. Our government here put us into very intense lockdown, maybe the hardest, definitely in Australia. So I was, in my studio a lot more, so I actually got quite a lot of music done. And also I work here in Melbourne as a music curator, helping other people to make records, producing records. So we were kind of helping a lot of other people to continue their art practices. But that was great. But most of my friends who were making a living from music were obviously had to really change their lives. And for many of them, we're still in a situation where they can't perform live and make money from that. So it's obviously been very intense for everybody.
Do you have like a sort of a studio at home where you can write and compose and help other artists as well?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, the wonders of the internet, we can do a lot of work for people over online. And I've got a studio at home where I can record and produce stuff. So, just doing it, in a new way over the internet, without sitting in a room with people. It has its challenges, but we find a way.
I got you. So let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family? How you learn? I don't know. All the people start fine. It was a piano at home, and my mom played the guitar or whatever. How were you? How were you starting music?
Yes. My father was a huge prog rock freak and played a lot of prog rock when I was a kid. One of my earliest family home movies is of me riding a little bike with Hocus Pocus by Focus playing in the background, and he's a huge Yes fan as well. So definitely that was in the air from the start. Yeah. I suppose I actually discovered the theremin through my father as well, because he was a electrical engineer, and I was discovering analog synth music and listening to a whole lot of different kinds of music that used analog synths from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And he was like, there's this instrument that was around before the synthesizer. Bob Moog built these things before he built the synthesizer, and it's called a theremin, and you play it without touching. And I was like, wow, that sounds cool. And he's like, I've got the plans to build one from an old, science magazine. So we built my first theremin together, and that's how I got into the theremin.
That's great, man. That's great upbringing. Can you elaborate on how the theremin works? Is it difficult to learn? How difficult to put one together? How expensive they are? Blah blah blah.
Sure. Well, my first theremin, which I actually have here, was actually homemade, built from a cake tin and two the sheet metal and a bit of wood on the bottom. So, you know, actually, I think it cost us about $30 to make this. And it's actually like a theremin-controlled ring modulator. It has 2 pitch aerials rather than a volume and a pitch. So you can make them yourself. They are essentially just noise machines if you do that, though. In order to play musically on a theremin, you're really best off to buy a Moog theremin. And Bob Moog built theremins originally, and of course is very famous for the synthesizer, but the Moog theremins are the only ones that are classically stable, particularly the Moog Etherwave Pro, which is the theremin that I play. And it is a challenging instrument to learn. You kind of have to learn how to be very still and concentrate. You move your hands in the air. So you have 2 aerials. One aerial is for pitch. So when you move your hand closer to your body, you get low notes. When you go up close to the aerial, you get high notes. And the other hand is for volume. So when you lift your hand up, it goes louder. When you have your hand down near the aerial, it goes soft. So you're sort of playing the air. Yeah. It's an electromagnetic relationship between your body and the theremin aerials, and it's basically a capacitive circuit that you're creating. But essentially, you are the instrument. Your body and every movement of your body affects the way that theremin works. So if you can imagine it like you're playing a guitar or a piano that changes shape every time you move. So if you move closer, the notes get closer together. If you move back, the notes get further apart. When you breathe, they do this. When your heart beats, they do this. So you're listening to your body, and your ears and your hands are working together. And so it's very much about being able to go into a sort of meditative state in order to play the theremin. You sort of try to stand very still, and you try and imagine what you want it to do, and you try and get a bit of a melding happening between what's happening in your mind and what's happening in your ears and what's happening in your hands. So for me, coming from a background, originally I was a bass guitarist and really loved playing metal and hard rock and punk stuff, and I had the theremin just on stage as like a fun thing to muck around with in instrumental breaks.
Yep.
And then as I got more into it, I realized I was really, you know, completely obsessed with this instrument, and it was a totally different thing. Playing the bass is all about moving and building energy and pushing the band forward, and playing the theremin is about being very still and trying to move nothing except your fingers. So I had to learn to calm down a bit.
Is it? How long does it take to sort of become proficient, if you will? Not an expert, but it's a 6-month process. It's 100 hours of classes, or
I would say it would be the same as learning a violin. So, you know, learning a violin takes a while, and because similar to a violin, you're learning how to create the pitches yourself. Like, you don't have a fretboard, you don't have a keyboard. You have to learn the very pure relationships between tones and semitones, and then you have to create them in the air. You have to train your ear very, very carefully, and so that's part of it. But also just learning. There is a way to tune the theremin to your body so that you can have predictable intervals between your hand movements, and that takes a bit of time as well. So I actually went overseas and studied in order to get that part of it right.
Okay. And are there a wide range of pricing and models, right? What's the low end or high end? I mean, there's $1,000, $5,000, $300.
Yeah. So the lowest end of a theremin that you could play music on, you know, that would be pleasant for people to listen to, is probably around $400 US for like a Moog Etherwave theremin. And then the theremin that I have is the Etherwave Pro, which I got for 1,500 Australian dollars back in 2005, but now they're worth $22,000 because they only built a small number of them. But that's the classical step. That's the sort of the standard if you want to, you know, jazz or classical or like very precise playing. And then there's some other ones, the T-Vox tour, which is a Russian theremin, which is fabulous as well, but very rare. Thankfully, Moog are about to bring out this new theremin called the Claravox Centennial, which is about to come out any day now. And that is being, we're all hoping that's going to be another professional grade theremin. So that's going to be about 4,000 Australian dollars. But yeah, I mean, it's like a guitar. You can have a cheap guitar and it'll sound cheap. If you can spend a bit more money, but it'll sound fantastic.
I gotcha. So, and you use the theremin on all the projects that you work for yourself and for the other people that contribute? Do other bands, other groups in Australia or people all over the world call you? Hey, I'm thinking about the theremin to put that particular piece for a soundtrack or electronic music that I'm building for that particular scene that's going to be like a horse, suspended. So a lot of people call you because I imagine there are not that many people. Well, there are not millions of people playing theremin in the world, right?
Yes, that's what happens. I mean, that's kind of what a thereminist's professional life really is. You sort of you do your own thing and wait for someone to come along who needs that weird thing that you do. It's obviously not going to go on every record that's ever made, but and it does. You're right. It does actually often. It's often for film stuff or guest appearances on records where they want some kind of a horror situation. But also
suspense movie and people like Goblin and I don't know, Claudio Simonetti and all those people, and kind of. It doesn't have to be a horror movie, suspense movie, if you will, electronic music movie, where that, theremin could apply to, a scene or a commercial or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So can you elaborate on how the Night Terrors came together as a trio?
Well, the Night Terrors was originally myself and two other guys from Tasmania. We were all Hobart guys, Tim Piccone and Yanto Kelly. Yep. And we were living in Melbourne, and we just actually friends and got together to have a jam. The music scene in Hobart that we came from was very much an art rock scene, sort of punky art rock scene, and we had no music industry there. So we were all very free to experiment with music, and we all used to compete with each other to try and be more original. There's no point trying to get on the radio. There wasn't any radio to get on. So we had this great little scene down in Hobart where we were all trying to outdo each other with the wackiest idea for a band that we could possibly come up with. And some amazing bands that came out of that time, like the Sea Scouts and Little Ugly Girls and all these fantastic art rock bands. And so when we got together, we just settled on the combination of instruments that we just happened to play. I was playing bass, and I had at this point started to think more about being serious as a theremin player. And Tim Piccone was a great prog rock keyboard player, and Yanto Kelly was a fabulous, very experimental and very driving rock drummer. So we just started jamming, and it just came together really quickly into this. The early version of the Night Terrors was a quite heavy synth rock, kind of very high energy with theremin as one of the, almost the lead instrument. And everybody at the time, post rock was happening in Melbourne, and people really liked it. So we became quite popular pretty fast, and made a couple of EPs and had a great time. And then our drummer went to live in Paris because he followed his heart to Paris, as you do. And so we stopped for a little while. and then there was a few other versions of the band, and people came and left. And as it just continued, it ended up being the only original person. And that's when I started to really think, okay, well, this could be a band where we can have the theremin as the lead instrument and try and build everything else around it.
And my understanding is Back to Zero was the first album, right, in 2009, but
we did 2 EPs before that.
But it took a while to, I think, be released in the United States and Europe many years after, so, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, I think actually Back to Zero, which is the first album, that was made almost as a demo, actually, because we had started making the record, and a couple of people had left the band. Marika Barden, our keyboard player, was having a baby, and so I was sort of left with this half-made record, which I was just playing around with at home. And before that, I had been the bass player, and I had been playing theremin, and that was it. And then I was like, oh, well, I might have a go at like playing some keyboards as well, just because I don't really have, the band isn't really together. It was just me and Yanto, the drummer. And so I ended up, doing a whole lot of extra work on this record, and that's sort of where Back to Zero became this prog rock opus.
Gotcha.
Actually, I was just listening to that record. I was working in a bar in Melbourne, and I was listening to it during the day when I was cleaning the glasses in this bar. And my friend Cody Abrams was in the bar. It was his bar, and he was like, "What's this?" And I said, "Oh, nothing. It's just like this stuff I'm working on." And he was like, "Oh, I really love this." So he convinced me to release it, and
Good for him, man.
Yeah.
Good for him. Yeah, you need to thank the guy. You need to buy him a beer, man.
Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. And then Spiral Vortex came after that, correct?
Yes, that's right.
What's the time frame between the first one and the second one? It's a couple of years.
So we made Back to Zero in 2008. It came out in 2009, and then we immediately went on tour. So we got to play. I went to Europe and toured around, played with Goblin and Melt Banana and those kinds of bands, and and then we came back to Australia, and we actually toured for a couple of years. Did a big gig with Lou Reed at the Sydney Opera House, and the band started to really, change from being an underground band that no one knew about to something that people knew about. And so we sort of started working on Spiral Vortex straight away, and we wanted to go in a more electronic direction. We were learning how to use our analog synthesizers in the way they were intended by the original, the 80s future-looking synth designers. And so I think we made Spiral Vortex in about 2011, but it took a few years for it to come out. So it came out in 2014. Yeah.
Gotcha. Great music. I was able to, this weekend when I was putting together this interview, I listened to those 3 albums, and then your stuff as a solo, the stuff in backup. This is great music. Different, right? It's a niche, right? It will apply to certain people like electronic music, they will like your stuff. But you need to have an open mind, I suppose, even if you like pop, right? It's good for me at least, it's good to have a wide variety, and an open taste, right? If you like only Italian food, right, the world's crazy, right? You're boring. Right? If you like food, right, you need to try different restaurants, right? And then pick what you like. So I do the same with music. And then I believe that some year later, the city of Melbourne commissioned you guys, I think in 2014, to use the grand, I think at the largest grand pipe organ, right? That's what the third album came together.
That's right. Yes. So that happened from, we went to Europe, we played with Goblin for the first time in Germany, and we came back to Australia, and we were approached by the city of Melbourne, who wanted us to do a project with their organ, and it's the biggest pipe organ in the Southern Hemisphere. It's amazing. It's like playing a building. Like it's 5 stories high. It's got 10,000 pipes, and it's like an orchestra in one instrument. So, of course, as a very keyboard-oriented band, we were super excited, and we were allowed to work with it over a summer for quite a few months, just like it was our rehearsal room. So we had a fabulous time writing music with this thing, and then the people who ran Melbourne Music Week, which is the big music festival here, came to have a listen to what we were doing. And when we were talking to them, they said, we saw you play with Goblin. Do you have a contact for the band Goblin? And we said yes. So they brought Goblin out to Australia to play for the first time. So when we did that show, we were supporting Goblin, who also used the organ for their show, which was awesome. Amazing to see Simonetti playing, all those classic organ parts from the Goblin records on our organ.
How-
And
how-
then,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then basically we made a record of that music, and that was what ended up becoming that Parva Nocturnus record.
Yeah, the Power Nocturnus. How big? I mean, when that particular organ was built? What the history behind the stuff? Because
yeah, well, I can tell you that now because I'm actually, my job now is to look after that organ and program artists to do projects with it. So I ended up becoming the organ curator. It was it was built in 1874, I believe. So it's been around for a long time, 150-ish years, and it's, you know, when Australia was going through the gold rush, there's a lot of money coming from gold, mining gold in the early, you know, colonial years of Australia, white Australia. That's when the organ was built in the town hall. And yeah, it's one of these interesting, you know, colonial things. It's quite a troubled, politically interesting thing, and so we do a lot of projects with it now, trying to look at it a different way. But it's cool. It's a lovely thing.
And we're for people that I don't know what's located, but is it like inside a sort of a cathedral? It have a lot of symbolism, Christianism, church type related stuff. Like you would think in an organ, right, where you know, people would play church, you know, when they're celebrating mass, that kind of stuff, or is have no connotation, no religious.
No. It doesn't have religious. It's a civic space, it's a town hall, so it's not a religious instrument. Most of the other pipe organs in Melbourne are in churches, so this is an interesting one. It's not really about, you know, being terrified by God. It's more like being terrified by the Melbourne City Council.
I got you.
Yeah. But it's a great thing, and a lot of people don't know it's there. So we were really, and of course for our music, it absolutely worked so easily for us to, you know, do our sort of spooky, unusual thing with this spooky, unusual instrument.
Well, I'm glad that you're commissioned by the city of Melbourne or whatever, you know, institution to take care of that and maintain it, and you know, now you have, you know, a free sort of instrument at your disposal. You know, you can make a lot of record, try different things with that. And I also noticed a video that you guys put together. I don't know exactly which particular song it, but there is one lady, I think she's playing, and then you are with one guy, and then you or so. That's, you know, I don't know how many views have received on YouTube and how many email you have received, but it's very, very well done, creepy, and you know.
Oh yeah, thank you.
You know what I'm talking about, right? So it's
on a video, yes.
Yeah, it's and there are not that many videos of you guys on YouTube and other. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think actually the Night Terrors, we never really focused very much on videos, and we were more making records and touring. And back, it's just a funny thing, like back then it was more expensive and we were too poor. And so we just didn't really do it. You're right, there's not very many videos of us on the internet. No.
Yeah, like 2 or 3. And also I think the band touring some festival they bring like in the Vivid Live, Bracara Extreme Fest, Deno Valley Swing Fest. Are there, do you know, any of those are sort of YouTube platform that somebody can listen to, or they were never recorded?
There's definitely recordings of the Vivid Live thing at the Sydney Opera House of our set, and also I got to play with Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson and a whole bunch of other people, and there's a recording of that. And then I'm not so sure about those festival performances in Europe. Not sure.
Well, we need to do some research trying to search stuff. Is it fair to say that a lot of works geared towards Gothic or electronic tendencies, if you will? I don't know if that's a good way to label that, your kind of music.
Look, it's definitely been described that way, and I know we have lots of fans and people who like our music in those communities, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, originally, Back to Zero was essentially a prog rock record, really.
Yeah.
But when we toured it in Europe, people thought that we were a goth band. I think it's got to do with what I look like. Like, I'm 6'8", I don't have any hair. I kind of look like Nosferatu, and playing the theremin, people just jump immediately to those horror connotations. You know, sometimes you've got to lean into those things. If in someone, you know, the whole John Waters thing, if you've got a long neck, you know, wear a skivvy. If you're fat, eat 10 pies. Like, you know, take the thing that people can criticize you for and make it your superpower. So you know, I think, and also it's fun. It's fun to be theatrical. So definitely when we did Palva Nocturnus, that was when those audiences really started to love our music.
Yeah.
And I don't mind. Like, it's niche music, as you say, and it's meant to be an acquired taste. It's meant to be I like to think of the Night Terrors as like a secret that your friends share with each other, and it's not for everybody. Yeah.
Is it a stupid question? Is it now, you know, being who you are and with the background, is it difficult for you to, you know, get a date? Or the ladies are scared of you, or I don't know, maybe it works the other way around. Maybe they want to go out with you.
I would say that it probably evens out to normal.
Like, this guy is too scary for me, the music like he listens. Oh, wow, he's, you know, 6K popular, you know, doing, you know, gothic electronic music on a date.
I would say I can't really comment because I don't know what it's like to not be me. But I definitely have lots of friends in those communities now, and you know, you definitely, you know, we enjoy visiting goth clubs when we go overseas, and but you know, I think these days things are people are much more open-minded now, and you know, there's a big connection now between classical music and techno, and a big connection between film music and rock, and things weren't. People are just, I think, much more diverse listeners now. So
absolutely,
it always surprises me who is interested in our music.
Yeah, it's with respect to the Night Terrors album. Are they available on vinyl as well, or just CDs or downloadable?
Yeah, it's all on vinyl, and actually, I think that you know, our initial Back to Zero came out on CD and was pressed 3 times on CD, and then it was really only when Homeless Records in Melbourne reissued it on double vinyl that our band became really popular. And we never thought that would make a big difference. But of course, there's a huge audience of vinyl collectors in the world, and they love unusual music. So for us, it was a perfect combination. And our Luke Fraser, who's our graphic designer and does all our album covers, of course, he'd always wanted us to go to vinyl so that we could see his artwork bigger. I think just the whole coloured vinyl, you know, Homeless did beautiful gatefold covers for our records, and it went crazy. And so that really gave it a new lease of life to the band. And honestly, in the last 4 years where we haven't played very much or made any new music, because it's circulating on vinyl, the band seems to be getting more and more popular. So without vinyl, we would be probably not doing it.
Yeah, like you see in the back, and then, well, I own a house and I have 4 different floors. I have a lot of vinyl. I mean,
Cool.
and CDs, and you know, vinyl, CDs, you know, those files, whatever. But vinyl, the sound is unbelievable. Plastic covers, you know, the graphic design that you have for it's very interesting. So it's
and I've become a huge vinyl collector as well because of our interest when we moved to putting out records, and it's, you know, very enjoyable. I suppose also because our music's been embraced by the horror soundtrack community. You know, we've put out records with Death Waltz in America, and definitely even my solo stuff I put out through Death Waltz as well. So there's a big vinyl collector, horror movie soundtrack fan crossover, and
that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
You came to the right place.
Yeah.
Or keep the right place to you. And also, I'm aware that beside the night terror, you were playing with, I don't know how to pronounce it, Hears. I don't know how you.
Airs, yes.
Yeah,
Airs.
here. And I think it became apparent that it had become an important part of your life as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that came from touring. The Night Terrors and Airs were on the same label in Melbourne, EXO Records, back in the 2009, and we were touring around Europe together. So whenever Night Terrors went on tour, Airs would and Night Terrors would do a leg of the tour together.
Yeah.
And you know, we were similar bands. I mean, obviously Airs is much heavier, almost doom kind of instrumentals. And you know, we're two bands touring around, and we ended up sort of joining each other's bands. So like I joined Airs, and Damien and Laura joined the Night Terrors, and we became one big sort of you know, community of musicians. And we were also running a record label, running a publicity company in Australia, doing tour managing. So we were just really getting involved in the music industry all together.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were much more of a goth band than the Night Terrors were.
Well, they're very good, man.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, all the work, and I followed, you know, in your website, all the solo project that you're doing, the other one with other people, and what you're doing it with soundtracks, and it's beautiful. It's very, very well done, man. Your other project is Nar Collector, right? Who is playing with you there? Is that an EP or a whole album?
That's I'm collaborating with classical harpist called Mary Damani, who's a fabulous avant-garde singer and also plays the harp. And the Nar Collector, we've done one EP. We have a new album that's just about to come out on Nosferatunes here in Melbourne. And it's I love this new band. It's totally avant-garde. Well, it sounds like, you know, the most horror soundtrack music I've ever done. I would say it's much more horror soundtrack than the Night Terrors. And I just met Mary by coincidence at someone else's gig. Yeah, and the record that we put out last year is actually a recording of the first time we ever played together. So we played at an improvised music night in Melbourne. It's all completely improvised, that record, and it was the first time we ever played together. So just one of those beautiful situations where we just gelled really well together, and the thing that she does works so well with the thing that I do. I get to explore parts of the theremin sound that I don't really explore with the Night Terrors. It's, you know, it's different sonic landscape. There's no drums or guitars, you know, bass guitar, and it's much more dynamic. It's also microtonal, like we sort of move out of normal tuning into unusual sort of anti-tunings quite a lot. She sort of sticks rubbish in her harp and deep tunes it deliberately, and so we're playing in a strange space, and it's really fun. Yeah, she's.
I didn't know who he was. That's what I was asking. I mean, the two of you, it sounds very, very, very good, man. Very, very good. You know, Thanks. And I only listen to the EP, so you know, I can't wait to hear the album, and it's very good stuff, man.
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere, and you know, we didn't know we were being recorded either. So we played the show, and then they were like, "Oh, we recorded that," and we were like, "Oh, did you?" And you know, it turned out really great. So of course, this happened just before 2020, so we have been unable to play. But yeah, we've got big plans for the Nar Collector. We want to take that all over the world as well.
Is she from Melbourne as well, or is it from Australia? Yeah, gotcha. You know, with the situation, you cannot, you know, play together. But eventually, I assume that you guys, with all the other projects that you do with the Night Terrors, Nar Collector, you will continue recording, doing new album, and doing different things at the same time. You know.
Right. Yes.
And then I also look at your website. The other ventures that the Gateway solo project. That also is very, very good, man. I like your stuff, man. So I look every single thing you send me, and feel free to elaborate on how the project came together. You know.
Okay, yeah. Well, the Gateway was actually that came from I went solo. I started doing solo records in about 2012. The Night Terrors was having a break because some of our members were living overseas and busy with other bands. And we started the Night Terrors in 1999, so it's quite old. And we decided we would come back to it when we were all available again. So I was like, I might start playing on my own. And I really enjoyed, the Nar Terrors had sort of flirted with electronic music a few times. And I was like, well, maybe I'll now explore that, drum machine and analog synthesizer sequencer, old school analog sequencing concepts. And so my first record, Science Fiction, was more of a almost dark wave kind of, early goth influenced thing. And then with the Gateway, I wanted to go straight into party music. I've always kind of liked to, with every record, I like to try and take the theremin into a new place that I haven't explored before. And I thought I want to play theremin at clubs. I want a dance record. So started actually developed most of that material live, just playing at a lot of parties around Melbourne and around Australia. And lots of house parties, lots of clubs and festivals, and just wanted to see whether it would work to make a dance project for an instrument where you're not allowed to move. So the audience is dancing, but you're not.
That's
and
right.
How to make that work. And in the end, it became much more theatrical with costumes and, lots of stagecraft stuff. And people really liked it. And of course, as I was saying before, with the whole Nosferatu appearance, so I really sort of lean into that with the dance project. And, I get a lot of Voldemort comments. But it makes sense in a way, because it's like you are doing magic. You're moving your hands in the air.
Absolutely.
You're in a club context where people are partying. Maybe some people might be high, then they really like it. So it's a lot of fun. And, the Night Terrors it can be quite serious and, sometimes neoclassical and sometimes rock. And with the Gateway, I was just like, let's just make something fun. I'm not sure if the theremin community really love it. I think that, a lot of the classical thereminists work very hard to try and make the theremin be taken seriously as a serious classical instrument. And I wonder whether they are appreciative of me partying with the theremin. We put it out with Death Waltz and in America, and it's been fantastic. It's been very well received. So I'm very happy.
I completely agree. You gotta do what you want. I mean, you learn the instrument, but you want to apply it to different areas. So it's up to you. It's your career, your life. You shouldn't care about what everybody else think of that. I mean, you have different projects doing different things, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. And look, all my heroes of music are individualist people, and they do the records I like are the records where I've never heard it before. I don't want to. We're never going to have a #1 pop hit with the Night Terrors.
That's right. Yeah, but you're making a living. Before that, you did. I don't know how to pronounce science fiction and electric, right? Mm-hmm. How the project came together as well.
Well, so really that was from, there was a great big goth music revival happening in Melbourne in around 2011, 2012. And I was synth punk and all this people looking at the origins of electronic music and the crossover between dark wave and Italo disco. And I was just playing lots of gigs by myself. And at that point, I was also like, now that the Night Terrors is having a break, maybe I'll start singing and do some songs with words as well, and just see if I enjoy that, because I don't have the Night Terrors formula, as a restriction. And that was really fun. Much more of a sidestep away from my normal practice. But yeah, it was fun, and you know, I definitely played much more sort of synth punky kind of clubs and more underground venues with that record. That was good.
Got you. As far as going back to the Night Terrors, is there any